I'm really excited to introduce our first speaker. Bosky Mukherjee is passionate about making tech more inclusive and accessible. She's the founder of PMDojo, which is a diverse learning community with a unique product accelerator that helps aspiring product managers and career transitioners break into and grow in product roles. Bosky has been a hiring manager and a product executive in her past and loves nurturing the next generation of talent in tech. Bosky is also a mom and a wife and currently lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. She enjoys the precious moments of motherhood, life, as well as her work. So welcome, Bosky. We're so happy to have you join us today. She's going to be joined in conversation with our own amazing Sanmaya Mohanty. Sanmaya is a really great addition to the Power to Fly team. He's recently come on with us full time, and we're so excited to have him. So please welcome to the stage Sanmaya and Bosky. I will turn the floor over to you. Take it away.
Thanks, Meg, for that great introduction. And hi, Bosky, and hi, Shalini.
Hi, Samantha.
So nice to have you with us here today. And so, yeah, the golden question, I mean, product management, you just do a Google search and it's the hottest topic of the day, the most highly paid and the highly sought after career option. So since Bosky and Shalini, you all are living the dream right now and you are in the shoes of a product management. So tell us more about your career journey, and viewers would love to know more about how you got to the place you are right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having Shalini and I to this wonderful, wonderful community and the event today. I've been a big fan of Power to Fly and so looking forward to future collaboration with this community. Shalini, do you want to start? And then I can kind of go from there.
Sure, yes, thank you for having us. So hello, everyone. My name is Shalini, and I'm currently based in Arlington, Virginia. So currently, I'm an associate product manager at Publicis Sapient, and I'm working with Marriott International. So prior to this, I was in a 3-year rotational program where every year was a different rotation. So for one of my rotations, I was a pricing control analyst, and I was generating financial reports, trying to help managers figure out if they have an underrun, overrun, and by how much. After that, I was a user experience specialist. So I was conducting user research and user interviews and trying to, find user pain points and then create personas and relaying that to upper management. And more recently, I was a software engineer. So I was helping migrate from one system to another. And I know software engineering sounds a little bit out of place, but my educational background is actually in information systems and data science. So I did program for just a little bit. And so I was ready to use all of the experience and knowledge I gained over the past couple of years to ultimately improve product management.
Wow. So great. Bosky, can you tell us a bit more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in tech and product all my life, as far as I can remember. I think even as I wrote my first program when I was 8 years old with lots of hard coding. And I think that gave me the experience of how terrible and painful hard coding can be. But that's what I did at 8 years of age. I convinced my parents back then to scrap all of my camp trips in school for at least 3 or 4 years and buy me that massive computer, those big mega computers I'm talking about almost 35 years ago. So that's what I had. So I've been in tech with computers all my life, studied computer science as well. And then 6 years later, realized that, I don't want to be a developer, wasted all of my parents' money and came to US with tons of student debt, and then realized, I don't want to be a dev. Between dreams and what the reality was, I had to pay a lot of my debt and pay my bills. I took the job of a developer in a 5-person startup. However, in 2 months, when they were ready to start building their own product, I pitched myself for leading that initiative. Don't know where that courage came from. I'm very introvert. But I'm so glad I did that, and that's what kickstarted my career as in product. So I've been doing this for 20 years and still loving it. And currently, yes, currently I did start PMDojo. And so you heard that from the intro as well. So yeah, that's kind of kickstarted my career in product, and I haven't looked back.
Wow, sounds good. Sounds good. I mean, most of us were just watching Nickelodeon when we were 8, and kudos to you that you had the courage to take up computer science when it wasn't the thing. I mean, we're talking about a time before the internet age, before the internet kicked in, and laptops were in-home phenomena. So wow, I mean, that's inspirational. Talking about
there's a reason though, right? You know, I can tell you that story a little bit. There was a choice of biology and computers, and I dreaded dissecting butterflies in grade 2. So I went with computers. There was a reason.
Wow. I can totally relate. My father's a doctor, so yeah, I can totally relate. Moving forward, like product management, all the PM roles, product management, program management, project management, they are like the dream territory now. And PMDojo actually helps people moving into the dream territory. So tell us more about your venture, PMDojo, and how do you make getting into a PM role so easy for all the people who are with the program?
Absolutely. So few things. I mean, when I started PMDojo, so I started PMDojo last year, and essentially it was born out of several frustrations that I've had for a number of years being in our tech industry. One was the whole narrative around diversity and the lack of, and trying to then peel the layers of what does lack of diversity mean. Yes, gender and race are at the cornerstone, but there's so many other nuances like learning needs, learning styles, people who, especially working moms who might have taken mat leave only for a few weeks or few months, depending on which country you live in, only to realize that bingo, 5 years have gone and we are now struggling to return back to work. So I think there are several layers of diversity. And I wanted to figure out how we can bring more diversity in tech, and product roles are very fertile, right, for enabling that. And yet we have so much of challenges. Most people look the same, right? Or they're from very similar background. And the second problem that I was really frustrated with was just the business of education. Like if you look at any of the boot camps and any of the courses, they cost a lot. And they teach you primarily theory, and anyone who's looking to break or transition into tech or product role comes back to square one, struggling with the lack of experience. And so, you know, this is where I sat down with a lot of hiring manager, my friends who were hiring, and we sat down as pure PMs and asked ourselves, well, how might we solve this problem? And that's where PMDojo was born. So essentially, you know, I brought in those two passions of mine, and we designed the curriculum from ground up. But rather than teaching only theory, no frameworks, and Shalini can talk about that, I really kind of deter people from even thinking about frameworks, is kind of help them learn, connect them with mentors from some of the top tech companies, and they get to collaborate as small diverse teams, and they launch a real product. So this is not like boring case studies. This is not, you know, presentation decks, but you actually launch a real product. And you pretty much get to step into the role of a product manager or a product designer. And you do that in 10 weeks. And then we help you with career support and connections and even mentorship beyond. And then we also launched the industry track this year, where you can collaborate with a real company and help them launch a product like the product manager or designer. So essentially getting those real world industry experience, which is what is the biggest hindrance in making that transition happen.
Totally. And yeah, I mean, when it comes to product management, all the PM roles, there's basically a chicken and egg problem. Like getting into the initial role requires you to have a 5-year experience. And how do you get a 5-year experience if you're not even into the role? So I'm glad that you're solving that problem. And I'm personally invested in this question because now that I'll be, as Meg mentioned, I'll be transitioning into an APM role at Powerfly and moving into this realm of PM, this dream realm. So I'm really happy that you're making life so much easier. And, you know, amidst this mirage of boot camps who all kind of advertise to teach product management and make product management manager out of any professional. So kind of, you know, you're differentiating yourself with real experience and something that actually participants can show after they graduate out of this boot camp. So from a participant's point of view, let's say, so tell us more about the application process and end-to-end, how I can apply for it. Is there any criteria? Tell us more about that.
Yes, there is criteria. So I've been fortunate, I would say, as a hiring manager when I've hired product people. And when I say product people, I'm talking about all the roles within product teams, right? Typically, a lot of people think that if I want to transition into product, it has to be a product manager title. A lot of companies have lots of disparate titles. So it could be product operations, it could be product marketing, it could be product design, and yes, product management as well, right? Product analyst. There are lots of different ways to make that transition happen. Yes, the criteria is there. And, when I have hired, I've been fortunate that I've been able to hire people who've never done the job before, for most part of my hiring manager life. Some roles, yes, I couldn't, but most of the parts I did. So when I'm looking at the applications, we receive tons of applications. Again, I'm very thankful for that, but we take less than 5% of the applications. So the cohort sizes are about 15 to 20 people only out of 400 plus applications that we receive every cohort. I try to put on the hat of a hiring manager and I ask myself, would this be someone that I would like to hire? That'll be the first question that I typically ask. So there has to be something in the application. I also like to see your reason for why you're interested in this role or these roles within that. So you will get asked that question in any interview anyway. So I want to understand your why. So some people might say, I'm interested in a management role. Well, that's not going to cut it to join or become product management, right? Totally. So I'm really looking at your why. I want to understand how you learn, because this is rather a different program. It's not something where you can just kind of watch in, all the videos by yourself and learn by yourself. I'm specifically looking for things like, how do you work with others? What does collaboration look like? I look for time commitment. I look for your reason to give back, and how would you like to give back to the community? Specifically, how you might want to inspire someone who might be maybe even one step behind you. So, I do look for that give back. I mean, we are not making money out of PMDojo right now. A lot of it goes into the scholarship fund and operating the costs. And then if there is a mutual fit, then I invite you for a very casual kind of an interview to make sure that you get all of your questions answered and it is a mutual fit. Not just for a venture for me to kind of get everyone inside a factory and just throw in the content out. So that's not something I believe in.
Totally. By the way, so just to add on this, so there are a lot of early career aspirants, and product management, from the looks of it, requires a lot of maturity. So what would be your roadmap for someone who wants to pursue product management, but is a fresh graduate and is fresh out of college? So what is a roadmap that you would suggest them for any early career professionals in our audience?
I would love Shalini also to take this question, because she is someone who's freshly moved into the role. I don't know if there is a very specific roadmap per se, because everyone's transition looks very different. Yes, there might be some best practices or some things common that I see in a lot of transitions that have happened. And so before I even start there, I think one thing to maybe share is that people tend to forget that everyone in product has transitioned into product from some role. Right? None of us were born into the role. And so when you think about it that way, it's not like this, an exceptional case where, you kind of think like, oh my, like I'm going to be, it's so tough. Like most, I would say, I shouldn't say everybody, but pretty much most people have transitioned into a role in product. But when it comes to a roadmap, even if you're a fresh graduate, you might have worked in some projects, maybe some student clubs in university. As long as you can showcase some of those initiatives, that you led or you were part of, your initiative, taking pursuit, how you might have kind of approached a certain problem, anything that you can speak to, some of these other projects that you did would be a good candidate. Of course, side projects are something awesome. As product people, you have to constantly be tinkering on something or the other. Usually, that's what kind of helps us grow our product sense. So any of these things that you can show in terms of, I think, again, as I said, I don't know if there is a particular roadmap. Rotation programs, internships, they're obviously definitely there. The challenge that I typically see is that these internships are so far few in between that not everybody gets into these internships. Some people are fortunate enough to get it, and then they can make. Some people, even after they get these internships, they're not able to make the transition. As long as I think people believe that they really want to get into that role and try to almost think about a problem like a product manager and say, how might we, there are lots of different ways, creative ways to solve it. I think you are able to find those different venues, but there's nothing that should be stopping you if you've never worked on a project before where you can showcase those PM skills to pick a problem and try solving it like a PM, right? And do a little bit of reflection first on where some of those gaps might be, and then figure out how you might actually solve those gaps or address those gaps. I think that would be my perspective. I think we should maybe break down this question into some more kind of, because again, as I mentioned, I think there are lots of different paths to make that transition happen. But I would love to hear Shalini and what she has maybe seen. Over to you.
Please. Go ahead, Shalini. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So my answer is pretty similar to what Bosky said. I haven't seen a cookie cutter path to product management. And I think it's really important to just understand your skills and also your desire. So if you want to get into product management, it's important to understand your why, as Bosky talked about. So what makes you passionate about product management, and how can you sort of strengthen those skills to get there? And also, even if you aren't in a product management role immediately, take what you can get out of your current role. For 3 years, I was in different roles, and it wasn't product management, even though that's what I wanted to do. But I knew that those roles would help me in the long run. So now I can understand the technical side, I can understand the experience side, and all of these skills are going to help me now in this role. Yeah, I know people, I wanted to get into product management for over a year. I was applying for 4 to 5 months before I got into a role, but I know people that, they were able to get a role almost immediately after their search started. And there's some people that are still trying, and it doesn't mean that someone's better than another. It's just everyone's path is going to be different. One thing I will say is that it's very important to learn how to sell yourself. And it's something that's really hard to do, and I'm still working on it as well. But sort of as Bosky mentioned, there's projects that you worked on in undergrad, and you can sell your leadership roles, initiatives that you took to make it fit the role of the job description.
Wow, sounds good. And this totally goes on to add, just like you mentioned, like nobody is born as a product manager, but you kind of pivot from other roles into this PM shoes. So basically, I was having this conversation yesterday with Jan, who is the product marketing manager at Ripen, and he mentioned that product managers answer the whys. Engineers are there to kind of answer the how, and the consumers, they present the what needs to be done, and PMs are at the bridge. They actually answer the question why it needs to be done. So basically, it's an experiential learning, and it's experience, and you just have to do it to learn it. And there's no hardwired way to go about it. Sounds good. And moving forward, Shalini, adding on to that, I'd love to know more, since you're an alumni of PMDojo, I'd love to know more about how PMDojo helped you to inculcate that product mindset that we talk about, right? You look at the product in a different way. Like whenever you're using a product, you look at bugs, you look at how the user experience might be. There's a different lens to it. So how did PMDojo help you in getting those inherent skills developed?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So I don't even know where to start with that. I think it's such a hands-on experience, and it's so different than what I was doing before. So before PMDojo, I was just reading about product management and what they do, watching YouTube videos. But until you get that hands-on experience, it's it's not the same thing. So, you know, you have a 10-week course and you're taking something from ideation to product launch. And so, you know, you're working throughout every single phase of that product life cycle. So you're picking a problem area, then you're saying, why is that a problem area? What are the gaps that exist? Why do you feel like you should work on this? And then you take it to the next phase and you try to figure out, okay, well, how can I figure out what user problems exist? So you write the actual questions, you create the stakeholder interview questions, you facilitate the stakeholder interviews, you collect all of the data, analyze it, and then, you know, you're creating the personas. You and your group are creating journey maps, you're getting feedback. And I think the best part of it is that you're also the developer. So you're playing every single role within the life cycle. And that helps you understand how to sort of be a better product manager. You understand the highs and lows of each of these domains, which means that you can help other people sort of get through those as well. So, you know, currently I'm working with an experienced team and also a strategy team, and I'm able to understand some of what they're going through and how I can assist them whenever I can.
Wow. Sounds good. And that totally makes sense, right? You know, the experience, rather than just like Bosky mentioned that she hates frameworks. And I couldn't agree more that, you know, just go to any website that preaches to teach product management and you'll find a ton of frameworks. And there's no dearth of rote learning or rote knowledge in the internet. So that's what sets PMDojo apart. On that note, Bosky, I mean, this is a question of mine. I just wanted to know, is there any tangible difference between the different PM roles, like product management, program management, project management, or are they just same and they are just repackaged into other things based on the organizations?
No, they are very different. I've definitely seen companies package them, you know, or even people. I would just say people, because at the end of the day, people make up companies, right? And people are packaging. So I would just call it people. Yes, we do tend to package them and use it, you know, how we want to, but these roles and what they exist for are very different. So very high level. Project managers, very much needed role in organizations where you have projects. You need, you know, a single person who can kind of coordinate a lot of those things, plan that particular project, make sure that, you know, they're looking at the schedule, things are happening on time, maybe there is a budget associated, things are kind of staying within the budget, right? So that's project management. You're kind of managing the different tasks. And of course, stakeholder management is kind of associated with it. Program management, you can think of it as, you know, where this particular person manages groups of similar projects that have maybe a common outcome that they're trying to derive. And so rather than managing tasks, this particular program manager is managing more of these projects. Right? So they're managing projects together and these projects have interdependency. So the granularity is a little bit different. And of course, with that, the stakes are kind of different. You may have different project managers working under you, whether it is authority or no authority, we won't go there. That really depends on how the teams are organized, but you're essentially managing these different project managers under you. So who are then managing their projects, and you're kind of leading that initiative at a more kind of a global scale. And then product managers are somewhat different because this is where you have a particular problem that needs to be solved. You're looking at it from the industry landscape. You're trying to understand what's happening in the market. You're trying to understand what's happening at the customer level, your internal stakeholders level. You're not managing a project per se, although in some companies you may call a certain feature release as a project, right? You can certainly do that. But essentially, you have to almost have the project management skill set as a product manager too, because it's more of a skill, I would say, for product managers, because there is some coordination to be done, but the granularity at which you're looking at things is very, very different, right? You're looking more at what should be the problem that we should be solving, right? Does it help us achieve the business outcomes? At the same time, does it help us fulfill this need in the market that's not being addressed, right? Or maybe it's being addressed, but maybe we can do it better. And then while while you're trying to manage these trade-offs between the business and the market, you're then really trying to hone in and understand, why do these problems exist? What part of the problem is there? You try to really go deep and try to figure all of those out. Then you work with all of these different teams to make it happen. And then you're really responsible to make sure that that thing that you launched is being used and adopted or bought and all of those things. So I would say that these three roles are very different, but for me, project management is a very, very essential skill set that product managers should need. If you just are an idea person, it's not going to be enough for you to sustain your career as a product manager. You also have to be really good in making sure that your ideas make it to fruition and end up into the hands of the customers. And for that, you do need some execution skill sets as well. Of course, as you rise up in the career, that won't be needed. In startups, you may have to do a lot of all of these, you know, and that's been a big part of, you have to get your hands dirty. If you're working in very large organization, you may have these dedicated roles and lots of other dedicated roles, and voila, right? You are one of the fortunate ones. I wasn't one of those fortunate ones for many of my roles. But essentially at a high level, those would be the differences. And there's several other nuances in it too, but they're very different roles.
Wow, thank you. That was so much information, and that really cleared a lot of my confusions. And talking about skill, we have a question from the audience. Pamela asks, what skills, technical, soft or hard skills, are preferred for a product manager?
So like they say, it depends for most parts. It'll depend on what level this particular product manager role is. It's going to depend perhaps on who other product managers might be there in the team and what skills might be there, might be missing. So sometimes, you know, these hiring managers might have some specific skill and competency they may be looking for. But at a high level, I would say, let me just look at the question again. So at a high level, I would say from a technical skill set standpoint, I do not believe that as product managers, you need to have a technical background. I do not believe that, unless and until the product that you are going to be managing is highly technical. So if it's like, let's say, an API product, or more so like a DevOps, right? Lots of products are there that are specifically for developers or engineers. Those products, yes, having a technical background does help, not only because you know, you have to kind of understand what do your technical users go through and their journey. That is something you have to understand. You have to empathize with them. You don't have to read someone's code. You don't have to code or comment on your developer's code, but having that does help. But for a lot of those consumer products, a lot of other SaaS products, lots of other kind of interesting products, you don't necessarily have to have technical knowledge. It does help to understand how software gets built. If you are someone who doesn't have passion for technology in general, and when I say technology, I'm not meaning a language, but, you know, some of the latest, you know, how is technology evolving? What are some of the things? If you're not interested and passionate about that, it becomes kind of difficult to have a passion for a technology product to begin with. So I think that level of understanding is needed. You have to kind of understand system design a little bit, right? You know, what are the different components, front end, back end, you know, how does the data flow at a very, very high level? So there are lots of, you know, swipe to unlock and similar kind of resources that you can definitely read. Yes, being able to query a database, so a little bit of SQL knowledge might help. Again, if you are in a very small company and you may not have someone that you can just request, typically you may have a data analyst team in larger organizations that can always pull data for you, but having a little bit of that does help. From a soft skills standpoint, I almost call them essential life skills. So as a product manager, being able to influence is so important. Soft influence, you know, you can't just come with an authority and say, I need you to do that. You know, you have to find ways that you can sell your idea. And this goes back to what Shalini was saying. You have to really, really know how to market and package all of your skills and background and prove to hiring managers that you could be their team member. Someone was telling us the other day in PMDojo, you almost have to kind of package your skills in such a way that you give this aura about yourself that you've been doing product all your life, which was an interesting kind of a thing. But you have to like really be good at influencing. You have to really have very high EQ. right? And EQ is, how do you look at the situation objectively? How can you remove yourself when the situation does become tense? It's one thing to talk about it, and it's a completely different thing to experience, with Shalini and the rest of the alumni. They get to experience that. How should you be able to make decisions even if you don't have complete information?
Yeah.
That's another soft skill. So, I mean, there are lots of soft skills that way.
Thank you, Bosky, and thank you for dropping so much nuggets of information. Now that we are short of time, sorry to cut you short. I'm sure we have a lot of questions, and you can move to the chat so that you can take the other questions that are there. It was so glad to be speaking with you, and thank you for being a part of the Powerfly Summit. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you for helping us.
Thank you both so much. That was wonderful.